Well, we've mounted the cross slide, bought a box level, which I haven't checked it for square yet, but I've set it up so that it reads as near as damn it middle of the position here, and in theory I should get the same position with it sat there and the same position with it sat there, unless this increase in width is all on the top edge, in which case the most it's going to be out is, I think it's 1.2 thou. It's each division is half a thou for 10 inches. I think that's an 8-inch level. So if I move it to there and count the divisions, it should tell me what it's out by. And it's a little bit tricky because it only just sits on that way because of the V-way underneath it, and I really don't want it dropping off because I'm pretty sure these things don't bounce too well. So if you count the divisions, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 divisions, which is 2 thou, and that's in 8 inches. Fair enough. So if we then take the same thing and scoot it down to the other end, it's a lot more. And given it's supposed to be a flat plane, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, damn near 8 there from where it should have been. So there's a number of explanations. Take that off for now. One is I haven't scraped it flat, and when I've been putting the straight edge on, I've been pivoting it, so it's gone on and it's teeter-tottered, which is giving me a print but not a straight plane, so I need to check that. Two, when I've tightened up these bolts onto the gib, that process has distorted it a bit. Kind of like dubious on that one, but it's something to check out. Or three, I haven't got a clue how to use one of them. Answers on a postcard. So I need to scratch my head again and come up with a plan of what I'm going to do, because by the look of it, I've got a 2 thou incline. Yeah, bugger. You'll have to forgive me on the last video, it's not an incline. I've just blued up the straight edge and carefully put it on once on that end, pivoting it onto that flat and lowering it down, and then wiped it off, did the same exercise from the other end, and there's definitely a raised area towards the front, no, towards the middle, sorry, as you can see, which I'm going to do is I'm going to take it all off and print it again and see if I get the same thing. It may well be that clamping gib does pull a bit of distortion. I'm still stuck with the problem of how the bloody hell I measure that plane square to that plane. I'm also wrestling with why the hell does that matter, given it's a single point cutting tool, and I could just see it on a mill, but I don't see it being too critical on this, because the edges of these dovetails are not, I mean, they're crap, they're not a machine face. So the only way I can see measuring it square here would be to make up something to fit that with a machine face on it, and then put a square edge against this, and then basically measure them two for being parallel or in the same plane, which is a lot of pissing about. when I put the box level on, centered on that section, it shows it's perpendicular to that plane, perpendicular to that plane, which is encouraging. Anyway, I'm going to go and scratch my head about what to do over there. Okay, so back on the deck. I scraped out the section you can see freshly scraped there, which was as per the print I took when I was on the machine. Stoned it off, re-inked, put it back down, and it's hinging here and here, and all the section that I scraped off, as you can see, hasn't got any contact, which means, or as far as I'm concerned, it means that when those bolts are tightened up, it's distorting. So that's a conundrum. So before I go ahead and destroy that, the surface that was already created, I'm going to try and get a print off these two and just see what's happening there. Then I might try and print the gib to that side. Can't believe it's pulling it that much. I thought I'd better start having a look at the column. So I just blued up the straight edge, held it at the bottom, and basically tipped it in until it was touching, and then moved it around a bit. So that looks alright. That's not so good. Now, given that that's the side the gib clamps to, it's going to pull that saddle in as it clamps. But I would have expected a bit more surface cover, surface points. There's obviously something amiss at the top. So what I'm doing, scratching head time. So I'll give it quite a heavy lapping with a steel diamond plate, which has improved things. I mean, I can't feel anything raised. It ain't great. The pickup on it is obviously the full width and 10 inches deep. So I thought, I've got another surface plate here, which is just a little bit bigger than the pickup contact surface. So I'm going to blue this up and try to print off this. See how we get on with that. Looking at it, I mean, it looks pretty because it's flaked, but I think it's flaked over ground. It's definitely not it's definitely not scraped as such. So this is the print with the surface plate. It's not great, is it? So I think before I do any more, I think that's got to be worked on a bit. Quite clearly riding on the outside edges, which I need to get my head around what happens when if you pull against a dovetail, but you're clamping, which is putting pressure down through there, but also down through there, through the other angled face, which is doing a bit of moving it in two directions. very angry wasp in the workshop, a big one. Don't think they like the smell of white spirits. So this is the mating face that goes to the column. That's the fixed dovetail, that's the gib side. I've given a stoning off, but you can see the abuse it's had in terms of chips that have got stuck down behind there, and then it's been cranked up tight, and then it's been released and then jacked around. So it looks to me whatever's got stuck in there has swollen the area around it. Same on there, you can see the polished areas are where it's stoned off around it. There's a bit of a reasonable contact there, next to nothing down here. That's fairly even. Which is the fixed side. I can't get into there, I've got no means of printing that. But all in all, I would be very surprised if there's more than 5 or 6 contact points per square inch. The combination between that and that. Now it's a static member. It's when it's in operation, that stays fixed. So my understanding of it, it doesn't need a huge deal of contact area. But my query is it distorting as it clamps up? And if it does, how big an issue is that? It'd be nice to get it right rather than just say sod it and put it back together. So kettle on, time for a think. While the plate's blued up, I've printed the gib. So that's the side that goes to the dovetail on the column. So there's clear there and clear there, but it's not bad, and it's been scraped, but looking at the, I think that's more for oil retention than contact, but it's it could be better. And then that's the side that goes to the saddle, or carriage as we're calling it. It's not been scraped, it's got a reasonable level of contact, blank spot up the middle, so I'm guessing when it was milled it wasn't quite trammed in. Anyway, so it just remains as to what I do now. I don't particularly want to scrape this in, but by the same token I'm not overly happy with its clamping. If that side, if that face, it hasn't got to make good contact, then the dovetails faces have to. But given that they work by wedging, you are going to get contact on the near edge, which is what we're showing down that column. As it's pulled, as the piece is pulled that way through the action of the wedge driving in here, it's going to be ramming that edge into the back of the dovetail, and the same down that one. So it's actually not too bad in terms of contact. It would suggest that there's a gap down there when the two faces are together, which would kind of correspond with where we're getting the crap, down that middle bit. Anyway, like I say, kettle's boiled, cup of tea on its way. So that's after the first scrape. Only rough scraping. I just want better coverage. So I'll stick this on a time lapse and get an hour or so done, hopefully. So that, as you've seen, is was that second or third cycle? It's already looking significantly better just from the spread. We'll give it another couple of cycles. The battery is about dead on the phone, so heavy inking at the top, just ink the plate, a bit less in the middle, about right in the bottom. But if you look closely, there's quite a lot of pickup points now. So what I'm going to do is start dropping just the blues down with some shorter strokes. I think they call the long ones paint scraping. Still big hollow down here. That is going to be the least used piece. I'm not even sure if the box drops down that low, because of the extensions, the screw that sits there. I'm not sure how much of that is proud. Find out when I rebuild it all. I'm happy to call that done. I'll give it going over with quite a large radius tool, just to give me broader surface contact points. I'm happy to call that done again. That's had some kind of blunt trauma. I'm wondering whether it's had a fault in it and they ground it out and then called it done. Some quite heavy filing marks. Anyway, I don't think it's going to affect it where it is. So that's that bit. Tea time. For the sake of completeness, I thought I'd better do the other sides of the dovetail on the column. So it's had about 3 cycles. Very heavy inking. It was basically touching at the top there and right down at the bottom, and nothing in the middle. And then So you can pretty much see there's, you know, there's some work to do, let's say. Dog's not so good. She's not eaten for 24 hours and had about 5 laps of water, so she's convalescing. I think she picked up a bug or something. Well, that's a couple of hours. Slightly heavy inking, but crap light, sorry. You got much better coverage. And the same on that side. So I'm happy to call it done for them. I've just had the jig on measuring the width across the dovetail, and with the, you know, the little jig I made up, which you've all seen before, and it's within plus or minus 4, well, near as damn it, half a thou. So there's a thou variation, which some of which is going to be the depth of the scraping. So I would say it's well within tolerance on that width, given that you have to release the clamping gib, adjust the height with the winding handle, then reclamp it. So any variation is going to be taken up with that gib moving in and out of its wedged seat. So I'm going to stop for lunch, and then I might put up this video sequence just for the column. Quick shout out for Steve Summers. Seems he's now in possession of a rough collie pup and scraping a shaper. As he says, things are getting a bit strange. All the best, Steve. Right, so taking a look at the rear end of the carriage which clamps to the column. If you recall, this was the print from the surface plate, and I can't print right under there. I want to increase the contact points between that flat surface, ideally going all the way under, but because I can't get under it, what I'm going to do is use the little surface place that I've got, take that surface down to give me a better spread, and then I'll have to go through the pain of basically trying to then print that onto the column there, which is going to be a pain in the ass because it's so bloody heavy. But I've got no other means of printing that face, and the flatter there, I've got no means of getting under there. Things I've had to consider: I don't want to lower that end and leave this end up. It's got to go straight down so that I keep the other face of this flat to it. The gib, when it sits that way in, doesn't sit so it's actually on that face there. It mounts on this one and the other one. So even though I drop that, it shouldn't affect the fit. It shouldn't allow the gib to bottom out, and if it does, it just means I've got to take some off the bottom of that. But there's, from memory, there's quite a decent gap under it. I've stoned these down because where they'd all been tightened, they'd actually started to pull up. And you can see the area where it's been polished, where the thread had started to pull out. I'm actually wondering whether they're supposed to be countersunk, stop that sort of thing happening. Anyway, so I'm going to give it a rough scrape over, start at prints, and try and get it, as I say, straight down rather than taking it down more at one end than the other. If I can work out how to set it up, I'll set this up on a time lapse again, maybe looking straight down. Well, I'm not sure what I messed up with that, but I'm going to re-ink that and do it again. Sure, it made it easier last time I printed it. Anyway, we're back in a sec. Right, so that's the first inking. Doesn't help with having the bandsaw blade in the way. Should really took it off. Anyway, gonna carry on breaking these up. It's definitely hinging between these two corners, so we'll do a bit more work on it and see how we get on. I think I'm beginning to see why, or that it may have been getting some distortion. It's taken quite a lot of material to get this down, to get that printed all in one. What I was getting was a strip there and a strip right under the edge here, and then the whole of this section's blank. And then similar kind of thing when I set the plate originally, trying to print from this side that way, I was just getting a very, very fine line down that edge. So ball ache, yeah, pain in the arse, yeah, but I think it's been time well spent. So now what I've got to do is clean that off and take another print now from here, extending this over. Needs to come over to about there, and then basically not take any off from this section, just take it off this section. Thanks to the explanation from, I think it was D on Practical Machinist. But yeah, I think that demonstrates it quite well. So this area previously, when I got the plate shoved under here, was printed nicely. I've cleaned it all off, put the plate down again, but with the front edge about 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches further over, and you can see it's not printed here anywhere near as damn it, a little bit there, and it's printed this edge here. So what I'm going to do is take that down now until I start getting that print over again, and then once I get an even coverage, not taking any material off from this previously done section, once I get an even coverage into this section, including all of that, then I can take the last 1/2 inch. It's a bit tedious, but it's the only way of getting it flat. Well, I've blued up the column faces and the rear of the dovetails. I've sat the box on the bottom and clamped a board on so I can sit that piece on, and then wiggle it up, slide the dovetail in, and then put the clamp piece in. It's the only way I can really get a anywhere near repeatable print process. I've just printed this top edge now with the straight edge, and if you remember before, it was teetering in the middle and I scraped it all away, and now it's printed at the ends, which was pretty much how it printed when it wasn't when it was just sat on the bench. So my feeling is that by improving the surfaces of that and the clamping surfaces, it's putting less distortion into it. Maybe not completely eradicating it, but it's certainly putting a hell of a lot less in. So I'm going to undo the gib strip now, try and wiggle it up and down just 1 inch or so, get some ink transfer, and then see how it looks. Just for my own benefit, I've reprinted it, and I would say that that's a pretty good coverage. And the only difference is when I first printed it, if you can see, I only got these bottom 2 bolts in because I couldn't get these 2 in past the casting there. So I've lifted the whole thing up, slid the bolts in, started them, slid it back down, wound them in, lifted it up so it's not sat on the wooden block underneath, and then nipped them all up. I would have thought it would be that finicky. Anyway, I'm going to call that, well, I'm going to check the gibs for contact and then call it done, if they're all right. So that's the contact we're getting when it's mounted on the column. So you heavy up that area and that area. This is the top surface, heavy there, and then it's basically spots all the way down. Now I can't quite get a decent view into the there, but you can just pick out the ink right in the back corner. So I would say that it's not printed on the top edge, so I might just refine that dovetail a bit. Well, I've reached a point where if I put the gib in and just finger tight the heads of the bolts, I can't actually move the thing up and down, which would suggest there's a much better contact surface. I've just nipped them up with a spanner again, took a print off the top, and I'm happy that it's there's no distortion going on that I can figure. So I'm going to knock it off and take a look at the underside again. So that's the print we've just got. Still a bit heavy at the top, which I think is more to do with the way I'm moving it up and down. I think I'm pushing the top in. We're still getting contact all over, but I am only just nipping those up. I'm not putting any great weight on them. Contact area along the underside of the gib is improved. Oh. So it's about halfway up. I might do a little bit more on it, because it's certainly the top half from there up. I can't see any. The gib. No, I've not done anything to this other than stone it, and I'm happy that's got a good contact surface. So I'm not touching these two faces. I'm getting slight variation in print, but as I say, I think that's more to do with the amount of work required to lift it up and down. I can't get it consistent. I'll take a look back through the images and see what I've got. Right, I'm going to take off the lower side of that again, see if I can increase the coverage. Well, it's not the best of inkings, but it's I've got good distribution. And somebody's running a still saw in the building site. I've got a pretty good spread down dovetail. It locks up solid and no slippage with virtually no pressure on the bolts. So I'm happy. I'm also glad that bit's done, because that's heavy work. So I cleaned it all down. I need to stick that on there, clamp it up in its upper position, and then I can start looking at fitting the what are we calling it, a carriage or saddle, the bit that hooks over here and carries the box. And then I'll start looking at some alignment. The sun's out, there's a good wind blowing, so I think I'm having the rest of the day off and go and do some fly fishing.